Welcome to our third episode of our second season of TACTALK. I'm your host, Alden Morris. We're doing a second episode right after our yesterday's episode because we had some great developments here in Washington State. If you don't mind my moment here. Excuse me. Alright, so I posted an article onto my Facebook wall yesterday that many of you responded to very well, and many of you also had shared it. And I really liked the article so much that I decided to do a second podcast today, the January 3rd, 2019. This is written by Jennifer Sullivan of Como News, of all news stations. It's called New Washington Gun Laws Spark Defiance. Moving on. Seattle, Washington rolled out a new law barring anyone under the age of 21 from purchasing a semi-automatic rifle on Tuesday. And this is I was at the Washington Military Depot yesterday, and I got to learn firsthand that, unfortunately, they're going to have to not be able to sell firearms to anyone under 21 and younger, 18 to 21, long arms, whatnot. Although you had your legal right to purchase a firearm, a long arm rifle from 18 and a handgun at 21, they've now changed the law for 18 to 21, from anywhere under 21, to not be able to buy a long rifle. Last fall, voters across the state passed tighter gun restrictions as a part of Initiative 1639. The measure, which supporters said was created to cut back on gun violence, does three major things: increase the age limits for the purchase of these long guns, tightens background checks for people buying assault weapons, and has a list of requirements for the safe storage of firearms. Only restrictions went into law Tuesday. The other two parts of the law don't go into effect until July 1st, said Tallman Trask, Policy and Advocacy Director for the Washington Alliance for Gun Responsibility. But in Linwood Tuesday, Tiffany Teasdale said that law doesn't make sense. Now here's where it gets interesting. This is the whole reason why I want to share this article. Now do pay attention. Teasdale and her staff at Linwood Gun are continuing to sell semi-automatic rifles to customers under the age of 21. It's a feel-good law. That's what it is, Teasdale said about Initiative 1639. Teasdale said that she consulted with lawyers about the language of the law. She says she has also reached out to Attorney General Bob Ferguson's office, but hasn't heard back. The term semi-automatic assault rifle doesn't exist for another 6 months, she said. How are they telling us we can't sell something that doesn't exist? And now she is right there. If the full law does not go into effect until July 1st, why does a part of the law with no definition go into effect January 1st with consequences for selling something that's not even technically or properly defined yet? Teasdale says she sells a number of long guns, including AR-15s. We can still sell to 18 to 20-year-olds AR-15s and semi-automatic shotguns until June 30th at 11:59 p.m., she said. Staff at Linwood Gun said a flurry of people of 21 and younger have come in over the last few days to buy semi-automatic rifles. People are trying to get into the firearms before all the laws change, Teasdale said. But Teasdale isn't the only one who is standing firm against the new law. In both Lewis and Ferry counties, law enforcement have said they won't enforce the new gun regulations, as well as in the town of Republic. We took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Washington, and this completely files in the face of both the U.S. and the state constitution, said Lauren Culp, who is chief of police in Republic, Washington. Culp said that the law is another example of big cities telling towns like his what to do. But Trask, with the Washington Alliance for Gun Responsibility, said Tuesday that the new laws are clear. This is the first part of our comprehensive gun violence prevention initiative that's going to make major changes in Washington state's law and do some big reforms, Trask said. So ending there, that's the end of that article. That was by ComoNews.com. I'll leave the link on both the YouTube channel for this podcast as well as the Facebook Live podcast. But long story short, Teresa has a good point, an amazing good point. And she's already consulted with her lawyers and her attorneys. And if they've advised her to continue doing so, then they obviously see some kind of loophole or some kind of grandfather law where they see that their client's not going to be held accountable for breaking a law that's technically not even really a law. It's a violation of our state constitution or natural given rights anyways. And excuse me, I'm still getting over a little bit of a cold here from this past holiday season. But that, again, if the full law does not go into effect until July 1st, if the definition of the term assault rifle does not even go into effect until July, how can they stop you from selling assault rifles if there's no definition prior to that date? So by all means, I support Truesdale. When I posted this to my Facebook, I did get a couple. I have some close followers that reside in Colorado that have ties to Washington, and not naming any names. They did say that times are coming for a call to arms, and it does seem to be that way. If I mean, we have the backing of law enforcement when it comes to Initiative 1639. The backing meaning that they're not going to enforce this law. I mean, I myself, I don't even carry a concealed weapons permit, and I've been pulled over multiple times, and my concealed weapon has been found. And I've been asked by several police officers, "Do you normally not follow state law?" And I say, "No, I follow the state constitution." And they're not going to argue politics. They're not going to argue legalities, and it's just a gross misdemeanor. They can't even seize your weapon under the concealed weapons permit issue. And a wise man once put it to me just yesterday that you can't repackage a right and sell it to you as a privilege. I mean, it's just not going to happen that way. So do check out this article. Do send your support to this gun shop here. If I can name off the gun shop again. Linwood Gun. So do show your support for Teasdale and her staff at the Linwood Gun. And if you can, support them in person. I mean, head down there and tell them what they're doing is the right thing to do, and see if we can't get that information out there for all people who are under 21 who've got a couple extra bucks, who can jump on this before it's too late. So we're going to end our first segment there. We're going to be right back after the break with more issues here in Washington State when it comes to Initiative 1639, so stay tuned. Thanks for listening. Bees Combat Systems at beescombatsystems.com, protecting those who prepare. 801-987-0893 for custom body armor carriers and tactical gear for military, law enforcement, contractors, corporate security, responsible citizens, and border patrol. Bees Combat Systems at beescombatsystems.com. 801-987-0893. Alright, we're back after our commercial break to our third episode of our second season of TACTALK. I'm your host, Alden Morris. So I pulled up an article here by CNN, and CNN, in my opinion, well, in actual fact, belongs to East Coast elite media, and therefore I usually don't uphold their opinion or consider anything they even write as factual statements anymore, because they're more than willing to lie and to plagiarize the truth and to just bend everything and withhold a lot of information. But moving on, they've put out a article that I felt was pretty interesting that a couple of friends of mine on my personal Facebook has shared, and so I thought I'd share it to you, read it out loud for you guys, since it has a lot to do with our show here, TACTALK, Tactical Talk, when it comes to politics and geopolitics. Moving on, this was written January 2nd, 2019 by Paul Murphy over at CNN. Washington State is seeking to reduce gun violence by making it tougher to buy assault rifles. As of January 1st, purchasers of semi-automatic rifles in the Evergreen State must be 21 or older. The new law raises the minimum age from 18 and comes almost after 60% of Washingtonians voted in November in favor of a ballot measure to place restrictions on sales of semi-automatic weapons. The age restriction is one of a number of new gun control measures within Initiative 1639, but the first to take effect. On July 1st, the remaining provisions of the ballot initiative will become law. They include enhanced background checks and a 10-day waiting period for semi-automatic rifle purchases. Buyers of such guns will also need to have completed a firearm safety training course within the last 5 years. Now here, I'm going to stop it there. I'm going to mark my spot there. So July 1st is some of the later provisions that's going to be enacted into quote-unquote law. On July 1st, the remaining provisions of the ballot initiative become law. They include enhanced background checks. Now, that's going to be, we already have background checks. I mean, enhanced background checks, I don't know what you mean by enhanced. If they want to take longer, that seems to be what their version or definition of enhanced means. Let's go ahead and flood the database with so many background checks and make them all have a mandatory 10-day waiting period, even if you carry a concealed weapons permit. And see, the only reason why I would get my concealed weapons permit now, the only reason why I would ask the Crown's permission to conceal my own weapon and pay a $50 or a $55 fee for repackaging my right and selling it back to me as a privilege is because that excludes me from having to wait the 10-day period when I want to buy a new pistol or even a firearm, rifle, for that matter. For example, when I go buy a firearm, I usually have to wait 2 to 3 business days. And that's just because they have to do the background check, and with the kind of situations my baby mama be putting me through, of course they got to do that most recent background because she likes to lie and do false allegations and things like that. She likes to try to affect my career, especially because my career is based on the sole ownership of firearms. But in enhanced background checks, the only outcome I feel, because it's a feel-good law, the only outcome I've ever heard of these enhanced background checks is just a mandatory 10-day waiting period. I haven't heard anything about they're going to make new staffing provisions or they're going to hire more contractors out to speed up these background checks or to have a more efficient process, for that matter. Moving on. Background checks and 10-day waiting period for semi-automatic rifle purchases. Buyers of such guns will also need to have completed a firearm safety training course within the last 5 years. Now, there's no real firearm safety training course as of right now. Unless you want to become an NRA certified firearms instructor, that's a whole different scenario. I mean, you're training to become an instructor to teach other people how to use their firearms. Not so much you're not passing a test like driver's ed. And that's another thing too, is in order to get your driver's license, you just need to pass a test, a competency test. And that's because, there's rules of the road. Now, I can't say I'm necessarily against a competency test when it comes to purchasing a firearm. I believe that some people do need it, but I also believe it's your natural right to not have to. Unfortunately, we're not the same road when it comes to vehicle licensing. But when it comes to a firearms safety training course in the last 5 years, I want to know what qualifies as a firearms safety training course. I mean, I've worked with several different groups from the J-Rock Training Center down in Timber, Oregon, all the way up here to various contracting groups with the Northwest Tactical Teams out of Tacoma, Washington, all the way up to, groups like SSCDG. And different events that happen at jamborees where we do asymmetrical warfare training, things like that. Do those qualify me? I mean, I'm not getting a certificate of completion. And if you look at my own YouTube channel, which I profit from, which I have a legitimate legitimacy from, backing when it comes to both firearms and my opinions on certain topics, such as global events and climate change, things like that. I believe I don't consider myself somewhat of a firearms expert. I do consider myself a very well known in firearms, well-endowed firearms. Obviously, I pride myself on how much knowledge I have in firearms and my weapons handling. So naturally, if I were someone kind of approving, I would see this guy's YouTube background and be like, this guy obviously qualifies for his firearm safety training course, whatever. But to have one the last 5 years, that's not like carrying a safety training permit or what. So, moving on. In addition, the new law will make all gun owners criminally liable if someone accesses and uses an unsecurely stored firearm to hurt themselves or someone else. Gun owners must now follow state guidelines to safely store their firearms. Even though part of the law has already gone into effect, the National Rifle Association is suing the state of Washington to strike down the new regulations. I-1639 violates the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens and puts people at risk, NRA Institute for Legislative Action Executive Director Chris Cox said in November. When the gun rights group filed their suit, the lawsuit is the first step in the right to ensure that Washingtonians are free to exercise their fundamental right to self-defense. In response, Washington Attorney General Bob Ferguson, douche, told CNN that the gun lobby is trying to thwart the will of nearly 60% of Washingtonian voters who wanted common sense gun reform. We were not surprised the gun lobby filed a lawsuit, he said. I look forward to representing the people of the state of Washington in court against the NRA. A handful of U.S. states have enacted stricter gun control measures since the gunman killed 17 people last February at a high school in Parkland, Florida. The state of Florida passed a new law last March that raised the minimum age to purchase a firearm to 21. So, again, it's a feel-good law. It does nothing to deter criminal activity. It does nothing to deter dangerous people from bringing their firearms into a gun-free zone. It does nothing to deter anybody from breaking into your home, which is already an offense of the law of crime, and then stealing your firearm using it. All it does is create more scapegoats, more feel-good laws. So if someone gets her the firearm, they can pin the blame on you. So again, we got a couple problems. If you're currently over 18 and under 21, contact the show. We'd love to hear from you about your decision to purchase a firearm over the counter. And if you're interested, we'd like to. If you're wanting to purchase a firearm from 18 to 21, let us know. We will go with you to that Linwood gun shop where Teasdale was in the first segment was mentioned. Then we'll see how it goes. We'll get it all on camera. We'll have a call to arms. We'll have everything go. Let's get this out there. Let's show our state, our Attorney General Bob Ferguson, and our Governor Jay Inslee that their feel-good laws don't mean anything, and that even if passed, we don't live in a democracy. We live in a republic. This is not the majority vote here. It's not the majority rule. This is about the individual citizen. And when you restrict and put more restrictions on someone's natural right, on something that says so clearly to not be infringed, then we're going to start problems. And we already have so many law enforcement personnel who are at the top, who can put who probably putting lives on the line by refusing to enforce this law. We're gonna get them all out there. We're gonna get everyone exposed on this, and we're gonna see this law shot down, just like I-539. Let's get this done. So thanks for all listening, guys. It was great having you. We're gonna close the broadcast here. Stay tuned for our next episode of TACTALK. We'll have a lot more developing news, especially when it comes to Washington state gun legislation and other geopolitics. So thanks again for listening, guys. You guys have a good day.